this team, we'll talk maybe a little bit more of the details now, but there was more going on, Pete, that I don't know if everyone fully understands. I know it's been an open topic per se, but it hasn't, I don't think, made the waves necessarily, or people just won't talk about it, but let's talk about it. You stepped away from the program. Dave, I hope I say this right, Wojciechowski, right? Got it? Good? Yep, nailed
yes.
it. Stepped in as the interim head coach for a little bit of time here, at least for the end of the 24 part of the season. And you stepped away because, and this is kind of what my question was about, the pressures of what expectations are. You stepped away because you needed a mental break. This life was catching up fast.
Mhm. Well, Dave, I think, it was anxiety and, what diagnosed with anxiety and depression. In this profession, any profession, right? There's stress that comes with jobs, right? It's what you make of it. And, I've always undiagnosed dealt with anxiety symptoms, but I didn't know what they were. It's not like I love my father, but it's not like he sat me down at the kitchen table when I was 15 years old and described, some thoughts that you might get.
Fair.
So I think this time around, it was lack of sleep, eating, but the biggest alarm that went off in my head was the fact that I could not control thoughts. I have three
Mm.
kids under the age of 12, right? They're stressing that. My wife, who works, you know, basically three different jobs. She's parts of, she's on boards, and it's just maybe it's a midlife crisis type thing, but not being able to control my own thoughts. And luckily, having the support of her, and she has a background, in this department. I was able to talk to our trainer, Donnie McPhillips, who's been with our university for 35 years. And within an hour, I was able to sit down with some people at the Cleveland Clinic, and we just felt it was best that, I take a little bit of a break. I thought it was also important to have that conversation with my children. They started to ask questions to my wife. Why is Dad in his room for the last 7 days, and why hasn't he left? So having those conversations, I thought was important. And I ultimately, my wife and I both decided that, hey, we're going to talk to them about it. I think, what, God forbid my children ever experience anxiety or depression, but maybe just having that conversation with them, maybe later in life, if they ever experience it, they know they can call Dad and have a conversation about it.
That is to say the least, so mature. It is so antithesis of what it normally is, Pete, because I'll be honest, I should say, I'll be honest with my thought. I'm curious your perspective. There had to have been a part of you who's come through, as you said, your dad, who I suspect maybe understands what you went through, didn't sit you down to explain this at either and what he deals with. I know those who deal with some of those anxieties as well. I don't want to speak for them, but I get that everybody's unique. But as a basketball coach, in the middle of the season, under the pressures you have, to even think or have the discussion that you're dealing with this and even broach the idea of stepping away from the program. Those are significant, Pete. And I'm when I heard about it, I was more impressed that you were open to even discussing it to anyone. Forget me, I mean anyone. And open to the idea of, yeah, I'm going to step back from the program. A program that's got high expectations to boot. What was that evolution like?
Well, I mean, it wasn't a one day decision,
No.
right? It was compounded with, even in the preseason, even in the summer, having a couple of panic attacks and not truly understanding what I was experiencing. And kind of just navigating through that. But I keep pointing back to not being able to control thoughts. Listen, I love to golf. I wish my wife would let me golf every day of the year. So I would try to envision myself piping a 280-yard drive down the middle of the fairway, and I couldn't do it. And just emotionally drained, physically drained, the lack of eat, the lack of sleep. So, I had a visit, in the hospital. I asked my wife, I called her one day, said, let's go to the ER. Let's get you situated. And then I came back for a day or two, coached the game. And I said, if I have one more episode, I'm going to have to take a back seat. And, That's what I did. But you know what, the support at our university is just outstanding, right? The support at home, the team, the messaging to the team was very identical to my messaging to my own children. you know, but I said to them, listen, you may understand this. You may not understand it. You may not agree with anxiety, but at the end of the day, it could be your spouse, it could be a loved one, it could be a child down the road that experienced this, and this is what I went through. So just to have the open dialogue, it's amazing how many guys I talked to, within our program and across campus, confidential meetings that they've opened up about some of the experiences that they've had. So listen, I'm never wanted to be a Kevin Love. I'm not trying to be a spokesperson for mental health, but I found it over the last couple of months, selfishly, kind of therapeutic just to talk about it. I'm happily married. I have great children. I work at a fantastic university, but this stuff, it's all over the place. And my stress is no different than your stress and anyone else's stress. But, what I take away from this too, Dave, and I mentioned to you this off air, I feel for the individuals that don't have the support that I was able to get. The single parent, or the individuals living by themselves, or anyone that don't have, or the individuals that aren't willing to seek out help. Again, I'm just blessed with tremendous supporting cast around me that I was able to make an honest decision with the support of them.
Yeah, I'm writing a note down about that, because that's what I think is the most. And again, that's the part. When this matriculated its way to me, in all respect, it certainly didn't get to me and, hey, Dave, you got to report, because I wasn't going to anyway. But when it got to me out of respect to explain, hey, this is what Pete's going through, I got that sense that some coaches are like, I wouldn't have a clue what to do in that situation. Or hats off to Pete for what he did. I'm curious what pivoted for you, because you were out until the new year. You came back. By the way, the team won 3 straight against Marietta, Hampton-Sydney, and Washington and Lee, the last 2 down at Hampton-Sydney in Virginia. You came back for the Wilmington game, and you've been with them since. What was the pivot for you other than getting to enjoy the holidays? And I say that absolutely with all love, because I notice my favorite time of the year, I'm busier than busy. But what did you get? What was your pivot point? What was the opportunity you had, whatever it was, that got you ready to be back for the new year and tackle this second 2/3 of this season with the gusto that you and the program have?
Well, when I took the leave, I went into it knowing that I was going to put all my attention and strength to figuring this out. I cut sugar, I cut pop, my diet team, what I ate. My wife had a list of things that help, right? A little medication helped.
Sure.
I always exercise, but elevating my exercising. Continuously talking to the doctors. So it was 24/7 that I was basically under care, whether it was with a doctor or my wife at home. So I had put a benchmark in my head that I wanted to come back after a holiday, knowing that we were going to have, I think it was 6 or 7 days off. Obviously we did a pre-Christmas tournament, and then we didn't come back till like the 3rd. So I knew there was some time there that I could, really focus on that. And, like anything, like I'm a competitor, I want to win. And I think that's ultimately what drove me to come back. And it was, preparing myself, physically, mentally, emotionally, to get back into this wild profession that I chose a long time ago.
Then the 280-yard drive down the middle, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I get it. Listen, for all of you out there, this is a large topic. We will have more of a more proper conversation with Pete at a later date. So I don't want anybody to feel like we're cutting it short.